Hello everybody, this is the iFind channel here. Unfortunately, I'm going to leave Thailand and actually go to Singapore, which is going to be another bit of fun, but why not? I'm actually going to take the lift to the lobby and then I'm gonna see you guys at the airport. Now, due to the fact going to the airport requires a bus from Mochit, which is at Chatuchak Park, all the way to the airport. Therefore, I'm actually going to use taxi because I do believe it's more reliable than the buses. But the metros are obviously extremely reliable, as you could actually see from the previous video. So why not? I'm going to see you guys at the airport. After a 30-minute taxi ride, I finally arrived at the airport. I'm now going to eat this, which is actually tom yum plus gyoza. And I'm actually going to board the flight to Singapore in about 3 hours at 13 o'clock. Okay guys, I'm now finally getting onto the plane. I'm sorry it is so noisy, but I'll see you guys on the plane. Okay guys, here's the plane, just a rudimentary plane, as you can see. Luckily there's actually a seat recline, unlike Vietjet Air and of course Pegasus Airlines. But unfortunately there's no infotainment system, sort of similar to Play Airlines. And as you can see, you just see some basic manuals and stuff. So basically a rudimentary plane, but it does include a meal. I actually bought a meal plan, to be honest, because they do require checked luggage due to my fact the luggage is actually over 7 kilograms. But anyways, it is sort of a bit comfortable. Like the legroom is kind of a bit hampered, to be honest, just because this is an Asian airline. But nonetheless, it still fits me because I'm actually 5'7". So why not? I'm gonna see you guys when I'm in Singapore. Now, due to the fact a checked bag does come with meal, here's actually my meal: basil chicken fried rice, as well as a drink. So I'm gonna see you guys in Singapore. After about 2.5 hours, I finally arrived in Singapore. Now I'm at the Changi airport, which is ranked as one of the best, if not the best airport in the whole world. And let me tell you about its immigration system. It is absolutely high tech. There basically nobody, basically only about like 1 or 2 people standing there to assist us, but in reality, like, you scan the passport into a machine and then they'll just let you in, to be honest, and scan your fingers. So it is definitely far more high tech than that of the US. So why not? I'm actually going to look for some public transportation and then I'm going to return to my hotel to actually leave my bags. Okay guys, I'm now in the bus. The bus actually costs 3 Singapore dollars and it is quite high tech in here, definitely more high tech than in Thailand or in Vietnam, as I was able to use mobile payments similar to many first world countries. And as you can see, my first impressions of Singapore are, it is extremely clean, to be honest. Very nicely organized as well. Okay guys, 5 hours have elapsed. It is now 10:30 and the reason why it has been so long is because when I actually rode the bus, I actually rushed out to actually transfer and I actually left my luggage behind the bus. And due to this, I had to actually go back to the airport again and then actually wait around 3 hours to actually retrieve this bag, because security checkpoints actually stop the bus every time the bus actually arrives at the airport. So luckily I was not able to lose my bag, and luckily I retrieved this bag, and this bag. Whoa, these 2 bags are with me the whole time. And after a few metro stops, I finally arrived at this stop, which is actually near the hotel, about a 15-minute walk away from the Ibis Budget Singapore Pearl. And this is what I got. I got this for $5.30 in Singaporean dollars, and I got this for $1. Yes, 1 Singaporean dollar, basically about 75 cents. So I'm actually going to eat and then I'm going to return to the hotel. Sorry for all the delays and stuff. I was so stressed out with my bag and stuff. I thought I lost it forever, but luckily I retrieved it. Okay guys, here's the next morning and I'm now sleeping at the Ibis Budget. I'll show you guys the hotel room later. Unfortunately, as I was talking with a relative, actually an older cousin who currently lives in the US, about like the presidential election and inauguration, so why not? I'm actually going to go to the center of Singapore and maybe look for Chinatown. Now, before buying a SIM card, I'm actually going to eat. Over here I have gyoza plus pork suki curry large and iced lemon tea for about $16.67 in Singaporean dollars. I'm going to put the US dollars down below, but this definitely seems a lot cheaper than that of the US. in the US expect to pay like at least like $20 for this. Okay guys, now the first part of my meal has arrived. It is actually a 4-piece gyoza. I'm actually going to eat, and then I'm going to wait for the ramen to actually arrive. And finally, this is my pork suki curry ramen. After eating, I'm currently at the phone store, and a 100 gig tourist SIM for 2 weeks only cost 12 Singapore dollars. Yes, very cheap compared to the US. After buying a SIM card, I finally have more peace of mind going outside. And let me tell you a story about Singapore. Singapore was actually part of Malaysia, but then it became a breakaway region, and then it became independent in 1965 under Lee Kuan Yew. And Lee Kuan Yew actually turned Singapore from a fishing city, a port city, to one of the wealthiest and most prosperous cities, not only in Asia but also the world as well. Basically, the GDP PPP per capita, which means purchasing power parity, is amongst the highest in the whole world. Now the first destination I'm going to visit is the Singapore National Museum over here. I'm actually going to go in and pay around 10 Singaporean dollars. And as you can see, it is currently under renovation, but it is actually open at this point. Okay guys, I'm currently in the National Museum of Singapore, and despite the fact Singapore is heavily urbanized, having 6 million people in a land about 300 square miles, smaller than New York City, there are actually 4 wildlife reserves: Sungei Buloh Wetland Reserve, Central Catchment Nature Reserve, Bukit Tuma Nature Reserve, and Labrador Nature Reserve. And the reserves are actually painted in green, and if you were to walk around downtown Singapore, you would definitely see a more eco vibe than say New York City or something. I'm currently in the exhibition now after being confused of where to start. I thought this is actually like for the access, to be honest, but luckily I could actually enter this with general admission, which is 10 Singaporean dollars. And over here is a map of Asia. Well, if you don't know, Singapore was actually part of the British Empire, and hence you actually see people driving on the left side of the road, as well as Singapore having type G plugs. Over here is a ship, and over here is the Singapore stone, which is actually from the 14th century. And yes, just like in the beginning, I did say Singapore was actually a port city, a trading city, and many Chinese elites actually live on Fort Canning Hill, and it is where the Chinese porcelain wares and stoneware were actually traded, along with locally made pottery or natural products made by the Malays. And this is what Singapore would have looked like in a medieval era, a stark contrast to today's world. Now here's some fun facts about Singapore. Singapore was actually founded in 1299, and according to Malay legends, Sri Tribuana, who was actually the first ruler of Singapore, actually landed here after a storm because he was actually attracted by the island's white sandy shores. And after he saw what is thought to be a lion, he actually named the island Singapore. Yes, Singapore, which is actually in Sanskrit for city of the lion. And this is actually the evolution of Singapore's name from Singapura to Crown Colony to syonan-to, and in Singapore. Over here is example pottery during the Middle Ages in Singapore. Moving a century into the late 14th century, Iskandar Shah, who was actually the ruler of Singapore, actually fled and found a new kingdom at Malacca. And then in 1511, Malacca actually fell to the Portuguese, who were actually expanding to Southeast Asia due to the fact there was actually lucrative spice trade in the region. And the Dutch ended up arriving in the 17th century, and between the 17th and 18th centuries, all the way into the 19th century, they actually rivaled with the Portuguese, the Malays, and the Acnes and the Bugis to actually control the trade in Singapore. Then come 1819, Sir Stamford Raffles and Major William Farquhar actually arrived in Singapore and actually struck a deal with the Malays to actually set up a British trading port, of which Singapore would actually be open to ships and vessels of every single nation free of duty. And by the 1850s, Singapore was actually the center of trade in all of Asia, and especially Southeast Asia. 100 years after 1819, in 1919, which is actually a year after World War I ended, Singapore actually became a more modern city, having electricity and motor cars, as well as telegraph and even telephone, to be honest. And what helped fuel Singapore's growth was actually Malaysian rubber and tin. And with the opening of the British free ports and freedom from Dutch monopoly, Singapore's population actually grew to more than 10,000 in just 5 years. Also, by this point, harbors have been met with ships all over the world. And fun fact, by the 1830s, the Chinese were the largest ethnic group in all of Singapore, and that still holds true today. In fact, 75% of citizens are actually Chinese, with some of the largest groups being Hokkien, Teochew, Cantonese, and Hakka. Over here is William Farquhar, who was actually the first resident of Singapore, quote unquote, by the way, because he, along with Stamford Raffles, actually helped to secure the Treaty of 1819 in Singapore. And basically, due to the fact William Farquhar actually permitted gambling and slavery, which was actually against Raffles' objections. Therefore, Stamford Raffles actually removed William Farquhar as resident, but William Farquhar actually wanted to negotiate to become the founder of Singapore once again after 1823. And this is what Malacca looks like during the 18th and 19th centuries. This guy was actually the guy who actually legalized gambling in order to make Singapore work. This guy is actually John Crawford, and this guy actually introduced license for pawnbroking, gunpowder sales, opiums and spirits. And he even started the Singapore Chronicle, which was actually the first newspaper of Singapore. Now, one thing Stamford Raffles actually did in his 9 months in Singapore was actually to create a town plan and formulate modern laws, as well as create the Raffles Institution, which was actually known as the Institution of Singapore during the 19th century. And then Singapore actually became Crown Colony in around 1867. Okay guys, after a while I'm now in a different section. This is actually rickshaw coolies, and rickshaws actually originated in Japan around 1868, and it is actually used for Singaporeans as well as other people to actually commute. And during the 1880s to the 1930s, fares are around 6 cents per mile, and rickshaw polos actually covered most of the island, both in urban as well as rural Singapore. And fun fact, despite the fact they only made 30 to 40 cents a day, in fact they worked 10 to 12 hour shifts. I'm not even joking. And the weight is actually arduous at around several hundred kilograms a day. Now, due to the arduous work, many workers actually returned to China after around 5 to 7 years of working, hence a high turnover rate. And coincidentally, around the same time, Singapore, Malacca and Penang actually combined to become Crown Colony, and it actually had links with the British Empire. And also by 1870 it was actually linked by telegraph, and around 4 years later the signing of the Pankor Treaty with Perak further increased the British control. And by the 1900s, Singapore actually grew all the way from like around less than 100,000 in 1867 all the way to 225,000, and many Singaporeans have become wealthy during this time period. Now we're going into the 20th century, where Singapore became the jewel of the British Empire, and King's Dock was actually built during this time, which was actually the largest dry dock east of the Suez Canal in Egypt. And by the time World War II started, Singapore actually had over 500,000 people. Yes, you could actually see the colossal boom of Singapore from like 100,000 at around like 1867 to just around 70 years later, 500,000. There was also a causeway that was actually completed in 1923, which actually connected Singapore to the rest of Malaysia. Starting in the 1920s, Singapore became a travel destination for affluent travelers, because American Express and Thomas Cook, which is actually a travel agency, actually produced travel guides to Singapore around these years, which actually attracted some affluent tourists, despite the fact many of the people who actually flocked into Singapore to work are actually poor migrants. Due to the Great Depression in 1933, the government actually passed some immigration controls, which meant people had to marry Singaporeans to actually live in Singapore, and they become Singaporean residents. I do believe this is the map of the Japanese Empire during World War II. And that meant Singapore did become part of the Japanese Empire for a while under the name Syonan-to during World War II. And in 1941, just one day after Pearl Harbor, Singapore was actually bombed by the Japanese. In just 70 days, the Japanese actually defeated the British, and Singapore became syonan-to, which actually meant light up the south. Fortunately, Japan did lose to the Allies in 1945, and Singapore actually lost control. Unfortunately, based on these charts, the Allies were actually outnumbered by the Axis, but it did not take long for the Allies to actually regain control of Singapore. Unfortunately, due to Singapore's invasion by the Japanese, many students were actually forced to learn Japanese and learn propaganda and stuff. And that language actually became compulsory, and the culture was actually spread throughout Singapore, yes. Just like in Korea. And Singapore also faced a food and fuel shortage during World War II. Luckily, after the Japanese surrendered from Singapore, Singapore regained control of its territory, and the British started to regain some control of Singapore. And just after World War II, the Japanese were actually indicted for crimes against humanity, for massacre of Chinese civilians and Singaporeans and stuff. And many were immediately put to the death penalty or even prison, to be honest. But not all was bleak, however, because in 1959, Singapore was actually granted self-government, and the People's Action Party was actually elected, with its leader being Lee Kuan Yew, yes. And in 1965, after separation from Malaysia, Singapore became an independent country, of which Lee Kuan Yew actually ruled for another several decades until handing power over to his child. Yes, Lee Hsien Loong. I'm actually going to put the name down below. Ironically, in 1963, Singapore actually joined Malaysia, but then 2 years later became an independent nation. Now, the reason why Singapore actually split from Malaysia was due to economic and political disagreements. Over there is actually Lee Kuan Yew. And yes, in 1960, Singapore's per capita GDP was only around $1,252 in Singaporean dollars, which is about a third of that of Western Europe. And nowadays, Singapore is even wealthier than that of the United States in terms of purchasing power. I'm not even joking. Singapore's economy actually grew from relatively poor, maybe about as poor as like maybe Malaysia or something, or Thailand, all the way to being wealthier than the US. Yes, what I meant was in just 2 generations, Singapore grew from like some sort of like lower middle income, maybe slightly upper middle income country to a solid upper income country. And over here, what some of the electronics actually look like during the 60s. And over here is the rate of progress Singapore has endured in just a few years. Same here, as you can see, the average monthly income actually doubled in just 20 years. Now let me show you guys what a house built by the Housing Development Board actually looks like. Well, if you don't know, the Housing Development Board was actually built in 1960 to help alleviate all the residents from housing costs and stuff, and it actually built a ton of low cost houses and still does to this day. But as you can see, this is what a typical house looks like, with a kitchen and living room and stuff, appliances. Yeah, so basically HDB actually built a ton of flats, which is still considered affordable housing to this day, as you could actually see from my Reddit post down in the description below. And over the coming years, the fertility rate has dropped from around 4.7 in 1965 to below 1 today. Okay guys, I just exited the exhibition and I have learned a lot about Singaporean history. Now I'll talk about Singapore today, because Singapore remains one of the wealthiest countries in the world and wealthiest cities in the world, and one of the most expensive cities in the world. And despite its reputation, food here is quite affordable compared to what I pay for in Boston. However, despite the fact Singapore is actually a democracy, it still has some authoritarian facets, such as the use of judicial corporal punishment, as well as, you guessed it, the death penalty. But in reality, Singapore today remains an eco-friendly country, and it is really clean outside. And let me show you guys, despite having the rain, it is actually very clean. So I'm actually going to leave the museum and show you guys the outside and the downtown of Singapore. Over here is the Singapore University of Management, and as you can see, it is built using more eco-friendly materials over here, and it is definitely built in the modern style for sure. I'm now slowly walking to the downtown, and over here is the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and over there is the St. Andrew's Cathedral. Over here is the Fort Canning Park. Now, if you could actually recall, many of the elites live all the way up in Fort Canning Park during the Middle Ages. Now I'm getting ever closer to the downtown, and over here is actually Clarke Quay. As you can see, there's actually some colors, and over there is actually the Old Hill Street Police Station, which was actually built in 1934 in the neoclassical style. Now, if you could see that iconic building over there is the Marina Bay Sands. It actually opened in 2010 and it houses 2,975 rooms. The fourth building would actually complete in about 3 years, and the total square footage is estimated to be around 15,000 square meters, aka 160,000 square feet. And that 160,000 square feet is just in gaming space alone, and this is actually the most expensive casino ever built, costing around 8 billion Singaporean dollars. Not only does it include 2,561 hotel rooms, it also includes a 120,000 square meter convention exhibition center, a 74,000 square meters to shop at the Marina Bay Sands Mall, a museum, a large theater, celebrity chef restaurants, 2 floating crystal pavilions, art science exhibits, and the world's largest atrium casino in the world. And as you can see, the top is actually the Sand Sky Park, which is actually Skyway, connecting 340 meter long with a capacity of nearly 4,000 people and a 150 meter infinity swimming pool set on top of the world's largest public cantilevered platform, which overhangs the North Tower by 65.5 meters. I'm actually going to attend the Marina Bay Sands Tower later because it is actually an iconic landmark in Singapore. Okay guys, I just arrived at a real Chinatown in downtown Singapore. Now, despite the fact this is actually Chinatown, it actually includes this, yes, a Hindu temple. I'm not even joking. But over here is actually Chinatown Street Market. You can actually find street food and stuff. I might try to eat there for dinner, but who knows if I could, because I don't really intend to print out any cash or anything, to be honest. And despite the fact this whole town does retain historic and cultural significance, unfortunately it is no longer considered an ethnic enclave, unlike what it was like during the 20th and 19th century, when this is essentially a Chinese ethnic enclave. And fun fact, this Chinatown was actually founded around 1819 under Raffles' plan for Singapore, which is actually the designated place where Chinese could actually live. Now, just walking across the street is actually the Sri Mariamman Temple, which was actually built in 1827 as a Hindu temple, and it actually provided shelter for Indian immigrants. And this Hindu temple is dedicated to the mother goddess. Now I'm kind of close to the end of Chinatown, and over here is the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple, one of the 2 major temples in the neighborhood. So why not, I'm actually going to go in and tell you guys what this is all about. And as you can see, some gods here, and why not, I'm actually going to go in. I'm now currently in the temple. As you can see, Buddha in the center, as well as some other Buddhas in the left and right. And Lunar New Year is coming in about 8 days. Yes, as you can see, they're starting to decorate for Lunar New Year here. Over here are some statues, including of Amitabha. This is Akala, and over there is actually Vairocana. And you could actually see 2 of these, which are actually Sintamani Kakras Dharma protectors. And in the middle is definitely the 6-armed Sintamani Sakra. And behind the Buddha Relic Temple is actually this, which is actually the Chinatown complex. I'm not actually going to go in and see what it is all about. Now, the funny thing is, despite the fact this temple was actually built in a Chinese Buddhist style architecture from the Thian dynasty, it was actually only completed 18 years ago. And if you were to go all the way up to the 4th floor, you would actually find a 7.5 centimeter relic tooth, hence the name of Buddha. But why not, let's enter the mall, shall we? Now, this complex not only sells food, this complex also sells clothing, bags, and souvenirs as well. I'm now on the way to Thian Hock Keng Temple. I do have to use the alternative roads to actually get there. Over here is the Sancho Kong Temple. It is actually a smaller temple, but why not? I'm actually going to go to Thian Hock Keng. Over here it is, the Thian Hock Keng Temple. Over here where you put some incenses, and why not, I'm actually going to go in for a bit to see what it's all about. Unfortunately it does say no entry, and it is kind of at least unfortunate, but you cannot really enter this temple. But why not let me tell you guys a story about this temple. Okay guys, some fun facts about the Thian Hock Keng Temple. This temple was actually established in 1821 and 1822 and was constructed between 1839 and 1842, and its main purpose was to actually worship the god Mazu, who is actually a sea goddess in Chinese mythology. And this is regarded as one of the most important temples for the Hokklo people. But unfortunately, due to the fact it actually closed, therefore I cannot really show you guys the interior of it. Now the construction of this temple is actually 30,000 Spanish dollars. I'm not sure how it translates into today's money, but why not? I'm actually going to go to another place. Why not? Okay guys, I'm now walking all the way to the Marina Bay Sands hotel, and over there is actually Lau Pai Sat, which is actually a Victorian era market. I'm actually going to go in here, but as you can see, not only is this city quite eco-friendly, in fact many of the buildings are quite spectacular, to be honest, and quite beautiful, kind of like the likes of Chicago and certain parts of New York City. Okay guys, I'm now entering the plaza, and as you can see, it is just essentially a food market, kind of like beignet food markets. You can find a ton of different cuisines here, even ice cream, to be honest. But I'm not sure if I would eat here or not, or if I should wait a bit longer. But as you can see, there are basically a lot of food vendors around this area. Dim sum, for example, and I do believe this is some sort of bubble tea and breakfast shop over here. Now over there is actually the Marina Bay Sands, and close to it is actually the ArtScience Museum over there, which actually costs around 30 Singaporean dollars for adults for the general admission. Yes, and as you can see, that was also open around 2011, and it was actually built by, you guessed it, the Prime Minister of Singapore. Yeah, and it does include like science, technology, art and stuff, so why not? I'm actually going to head to that museum because it is actually very, very close to that of the Marina Bay Sands. And if you were to see over there, that is actually the Red Dot Design Museum. Okay guys, I just entered the shops at Marina Bay Sands over here. I'm actually going to go through the shops and then go to the ArtScience Museum and potentially return back here once again. Well, as you can see, this is quite a spectacular view of Singapore, and it does look quite serene, to be honest. Even though there are a ton of people, it absolutely looks quite dope and technologically advanced, in my opinion. But over there I would think there are a lot of luxury shops and stuff, but Singapore has gone through gentrification since, like, I do believe 1965, and hence it become this wealthy. And fun fact, this is actually an Apple store. Yes, the whole spear is actually an Apple store. I just got into the ArtScience Museum, and unfortunately the $30 ticket only applies to this exhibition. But why not? I'm actually going to enter this exhibition because I do believe the entire museum to its entirety will be way too expensive. But whatever, it's just my opinion. It's not like I don't have money, but in fact I do have to use my money for like future purposes, such as starting a tech company or something. I'm now inside the exhibition here, and this is what the museum actually looks like. Now I'm actually going to go here, which is just another exhibition. But why not, let's explore around to see what this is all about. And funny thing is, this actually points to somewhere in early March of 2040. Okay guys, as you can see over there, that is actually a slide. And it is actually a small town of some sort down here. Not only does it discuss things in art, it also discusses things in physics. As you can see, the law of inertia, the law of acceleration, and the law of action and reaction. Now if you were to go over here, it is definitely going to be a fake aquarium. And over here is an art room of some sort. Okay guys, it's been about 15 minutes and here's my masterpiece. After completing the painting, which I do admit is not really a masterpiece, Here's another exhibition. I'm not sure what it is, but it does look quite cool, to be honest. Over in this exhibition you could actually climb, but I'm actually scared of heights, so I'm not gonna climb this time. Over here is my second work of art based on a propeller airplane. As you can see, my artwork does appear on a screen. Yes, over there. Okay guys, I'm now in another exhibition. As you can see, there are lots of lights in here. This basically kind of is reminiscent of the Museum of Illusions in Ljubljana, Slovenia that I visited around 2 years ago. Now I'm actually going to leave this exhibition. I'm scared I might get electrocuted if I were to touch the lights, but I'm now into safety finally. Okay guys, after leaving the ArtScience Museum, I'm finally in the mall of Marina Bay Sands, and this mall includes a ton of luxurious shops and stuff. I've seen several like posh clothing designer stores and stuff. As you can see, Ralph Lauren, Dolce and Gabbana, Guardian down there, and I'm actually going to eat. Why not? I'm thinking between R&B and maybe several others in a food court, because I do think the food court is more affordable. Maybe So Pho, who knows? Is this really a pho restaurant? Yes it is, Vietnamese cafe. I'll see you guys when I get my food. Well, due to the fact I do have persistent agoraphobia, I'm quite paranoid at climbing and stuff, so therefore I cannot really partake in many activities. But as you can see, there's actually some pho over here. I'm currently at So Pho now, and after about 5 minutes I finally got this meal, which is actually lemongrass rice with eggs and vegetables and stuff, so it is very appetizing and very healthy. This is actually at So Pho, a Vietnamese restaurant, but I've not really seen any Vietnamese customers or even staff. In fact, much of the staff is actually ethnic Malays, to be honest. So right now I'm actually gonna eat this, and then I'm gonna see you guys soon. And this actually costed me $13 US. I just left the restaurant and paid $16.55 in Singaporean dollars, so basically around $12, not 13. The internet did overcharge me, however. But as you can see, there are a ton of restaurants around here, and even Lululemon, Coach, Cartier and stuff. So a ton of upscale stores and posh stores and stuff. But why not? I'm actually just gonna cross into the Apple store. Yeah, the Spear. Okay guys, I'm finally out, and there's still some rain, but Singapore does look quite dope at night time, and with the trees and stuff, it does give Singapore an eco vibe. So why not? I'm actually going to walk all the way to the Spear. Yeah, basically the Apple store design is quite eccentric, kind of like the New York 5th Avenue one. There is even a Louis Vuitton store outside of the mall as well. And finally over here it is, the Apple store in Marina Bay Sands, a separate building but a spherical building, kind of reminiscent of the New York City Cube at 5th Avenue. Unfortunately, there's no direct entrance via the bridge. You do have to go through the basement and then to the underpass. Okay guys, here's the Apple store. Yes, the AirPods 4. And now I'm gonna show you guys some new iPhones. The 16 Pro Max, the 16 Plus, the 16 and the 16 Pro. I'm now back outside on the way home, and as you can see, there are actually some water fountains. Yes, it does look quite striking, to be honest. This happens at night, by the way, and as you can see, this building is actually flashing green and white. So why not? I'm actually going to take the bus home. Now over here it is. We're on Helix Bridge now, and let's say goodbye to Singapore for the day. I'm actually going to return to the center tomorrow for some more attractions, but why not? I'm just going to go to the hotel because I'm quite tired. Yeah, and then in 2 more days I'm actually going to go to Vietnam for Tet to celebrate with my parents. Good morning guys, over here is what my room looks like. I was sorry if I cannot show my room in the previous days, but over here is a simple restroom, and this is what the bedroom looks like, so quite simplistic. Yes, with my 2 bags. I did able to find this one like 2 days ago, luckily. So I'll see you guys when I'm outside. I just exited the hotel, and over here is the Sultan Mosque. I'm actually going to go there later. Why not? I'm actually going to eat something first. And since Singapore is actually a multi-ethnic country, comprising of Chinese, Malays, Indians and foreigners and the rest of society. Therefore, I'm actually going to try out each ethnic food here. So here is al tasnim. I'm actually going to try out that for a bit if it accepts credit card. Okay guys, here's my meal. I paid 15 Singapore dollars, aka 11 US dollars on this. Yes, basically better than many McDonald's at this price. And over here I do have some rice and some meat, fries. This is actually the nasi goreng combo, as well as the Pepsi as well. So I will eat and then I'll see you guys later at the Sultan Mosque. I've just finished eating, and fun fact, this restaurant actually opens 24/7. I'm not even joking. Yes, 24/7. And why not? I'm actually going to head to the Sultan Mosque, which is definitely the biggest mosque in Singapore and the most prominent one. Unfortunately, I could not really record or take pictures in the Sultan Mosque, but as you can see, the official name of the Sultan Mosque is Masjid Sultan. And over here is what the mosque looks like. It is definitely one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent mosque in all of Singapore, and it could actually be found in Kampong Glam district at the intersection of North Bridge Road and Muscat Street. And as you can see, this is what the mosque looks like. It was actually constructed in 1924, so about 100 years ago, and was actually completed in 1932. Now this mosque was first inaugurated in the very end of 1929, just several months after the Great Depression started. And if you don't know, Sultan is actually the name of Sultan Hussein Shah. Yes, the mosque is actually named after him. And what Sultan Hussein Shah is known for is he, along with Sir Stamford Raffles, actually signed a treaty in 1819 that permitted the British to officially establish a trade settlement in Singapore. Now $3,000 was actually used to fund the construction of the former mosque, but in 1924, because the mosque was actually over a century old, it was actually demolished, and this mosque actually took the place, and renovations to actually make it become like this actually amounted to about $250,000 in Singaporean dollars. And due to the fact there were a lot of funds, hence a new mosque was actually built, and it actually looks like this. And in 1975, the Singapore government started to designate this as a monument. After a while at the Sultan Mosque, why not? I'm actually going to stop by the Sri Mariamman Temple, a temple of which I could not actually visit yesterday due to the rain. I'm scared my socks will be wet, so why not? I'm actually going to revisit this for today. Okay guys, I'm now in, and this is what the temple looks like. I'm sorry if the music is quite loud, but this is what the temple looks like in its full. And once you go deeper, you actually see some of these. Yeah, some more Hindu gods and goddesses and stuff. After a few minutes train ride, I finally arrived at the Gardens of the Bay, which is quite a nice garden, to be honest. I'm actually going to hang out around here for maybe a few hours before I go to the Botanical Garden of Singapore. Over here is a guide of some of the amenities, including the very iconic OCBC, Skyway, Super Tree Observatory and Super Tree Grove. And why not? I'm actually going to go to the ticketing counter to actually buy some tickets to garner admission into, you guessed it, the Gardens of the Bay in Singapore. I'm now at Satay by the Bay, which is actually a food court inside the Garden by the Bay. And why not? I'm just going to stay here for a bit and actually take some bit of rest before actually going into the gardens. And as you can see, there are basically a ton of foods ranging from Turkish, Indian, Thai, to like Chinese and stuff, and even Japanese, who knows. But why not? I'm actually gonna stay here for a bit and then talk you through this Gardens by the Bay, which actually is adjacent to the Marina Bay Sands. Here's some fun facts about the Gardens by the Bay. It is actually an urban park which actually spans 105 hectares at 260 acres, and it was actually constructed in 2012. It actually first opened in 2012 as well, which means it is quite a recent park, to be honest, in Singapore, but still nonetheless it is quite iconic. There are actually 3 waterfront gardens. One is actually the Bay South Garden and Marina South Bay East Garden, with the Founders Memorial in Marina East and the Bay Central Garden in the downtown core and Kaliang. And Bay South Garden, which is actually the largest garden, is around 120 acres. So basically around half of the size of the whole complex Gardens by the Bay. Now alongside the ArtScience Museum, Lee Hsien Loong, the Prime Minister of Singapore, was actually involved in this. In 2005 on the National Day Rally of Singapore, the Gardens of the Bay was intended to be a park for Singaporeans as well as a national icon. And it did fare well because there are actually 50 million visitors by 2018. After some bit of break, I'm finally going to walk towards the Gardens by the Bay, and I'll show you guys what it is in a sec. Okay guys, here's actually the entrance. As you can see, this building is also quite dope, alongside the Marina Bay Sands, as well as some others, including the ArtScience Museum. And why not, I'm actually gonna buy tickets. I heard tickets are around 14 Singaporean dollars, but I'm not too sure. After paying about $25 for a combo, aka 34 Singaporean dollars for this combo, Cloud Forest plus the Skyway Super Tree, I finally arrived at the Gardens by the Bay here, and here is the full map. And yes, over here is the entire ticket. Unfortunately, OCBC has been closed for maintenance, but it is nonetheless quite iconic, to be honest. And why not, I'm actually going to go to the beginning of the park, which is quite expensive, to be honest, but absolutely worth it. Kind of like the Miracle Garden in Dubai. Now over here is the Golden Garden, as you can see, with these iconic trees and stuff. This is all a symbol of the Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. And there are also Western food chains such as Starbucks and McDonald's, and even a Shake Shack at the ticketing center. And after about a 2-minute walk, I finally arrived at the Super Tree Grove over here. Up there is actually the OCBC Skyway, which is actually 22 meters above ground level, and unfortunately there's actually construction. If you could actually see, yes, some construction guys actually walking up there. And unfortunately it's also raining as well. As you can see, even more construction equipment. I'm now currently in the line waiting for the Super Tree Observatory. So when I'll see you guys in there. After a few minutes waiting, I finally arrived at the Super Tree Observatory here. We're now on the lift now. Yes. As you can see, this kind of reminds me of the One World Trade Center in New York City, which shows New York all the way from like 1700 all the way into today. And we're now in the top now. And here it is. I'm now finally on the top of the Super Tree Observatory. And as you can see, this is actually the skyline of Singapore. It is quite epic. And you really only need to pay like 14 Singaporean dollars to get up here, but I actually paid 34, so I could go to the Cloud Garden as well. And it looks absolutely epic from up here. You could actually see Marina Bay Sands, as well as several other buildings. And you could even see part of the ArtScience Museum, although it's a bit obstructed. And of course the Singapore Flyer, as well as some luxurious condos and stuff. And over there is actually the sea, which would actually lead you to the Batam Island in Indonesia, somewhere around 20 miles away. Over here is some turf, and if you were to go around, you would actually see some more of the garden over here. Now this garden is quite expansive, and it spans all the way there to the end. And yeah, this is quite serene, to be honest, and a quite affordable way to actually see the skyline of Singapore. I'm now down a level in the bar, and over here is the observatory. You can actually see other parts of the park as well as the skyline. But I think the skyline is on the opposite side, so I cannot really judge yet. Now I'm currently in the lower floor of the observatory, and you could actually see the Straits of Singapore over there, and the water plants probably underneath inside the park. And the Marina Bay Cruise Center is going to be somewhere around here, I believe so. Around there. And as you can see, this is actually the skyscrapers over here. And now the whole observatory is actually this big, to be honest. Yeah, I'm actually just going to walk through. And here's some more views on the skyline. It is kind of a bit obstructed because of all of these, but as you can see, you could actually see some things Bayfront Pavilion, Flora Fantasy, and of course Marina Bay Sands, and of course that's the Singapore Flyer over there. Quite iconic nonetheless, but yeah, some people are even waiting in line, to be honest. But in reality, yeah, I'm really scared of my fall, to be honest. As you guys know, I do have agoraphobia, so therefore I'm quite paranoid of heights. But the whole skyway is actually closed for maintenance, unfortunately. But that would be quite fun to actually go through. So right now I'm just going to return to the cafe. But first off, here's the active garden, heritage garden, silver garden, flower dome over there, and the cloud forest somewhere around the vicinity. Actually, this is the flower dome, and this is actually the cloud forest. I'm sorry, it's a bit confusing, to be honest, but why not? I'm going to go back in. And yes, I'm a bit confused somehow. I'm now finally down in the ground level, and let's say goodbye to the Super Tree Observatory. Now I'm actually going to go to the Cloud Garden. Okay guys, I'm now walking to the Cloud Forest. I'll see you guys in the forest. I'm finally inside the Cloud Forest, and as you can see, there are a ton of flowers as well as some species and stuff. There's a ton of plants here, and it is definitely quite cold, to be honest. Yeah, it is quite refreshing compared to the outside, where the outside is quite hot and humid as well, at around 20 degrees Celsius. And here I believe it's somewhere around like 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Now over here is actually a Maori carving from New Zealand called Tani Te Waira Kuaha. Now over here is the renowned waterfall in the Cloud Forest. I'm now just sitting and resting a bit, and then I'm going to go all the way up to the roof. I'm now currently walking around the Cloud Forest, and there are lots of species and stuff. Some full animals here, as well as even more plant species as well. Flowers, yeah. And even some murals and artwork as well. Like over here, for example, this is actually the Thinker, and it was actually sculpted by Mr. Lee Kuan Yew over here. I'm now going up all the way to the bridge here, so I'll see you guys when I'm at the top. Now over here is some vapor. Now in the second floor you would actually find the Lost World here. Okay guys, it just made it up to level 6, which is near the top floor. And why not, I'm actually going to climb the stairs to level 7, why not? Which is where the Lost World is, and I'll show you guys what it is. Okay guys, this is the Lost World here, and over here ethereal white Persians. Yes, these are actual plants. Well, no, they aren't, because they're actually blowing glass and steel. But you do see many more real plants as well as even artificial plants, and over there is actually an artificial animal. Now over here I'm currently in a cloud walk. Yes, you could actually see the outside from here. And yeah, that is actually the Super Tree. And over there is Marina Sands. And I'm not sure where it would head me to, but this is what the cloud walk looks like. And you can even see the lower levels as well. Now I just went all the way down from the 7th floor to the 6th floor and then to the 5th floor, and here's the waterfall view, where you can actually see the waterfall. Over here it is, yeah. Yeah, that is the waterfall, and I'll show you in more detailed view. Yes, this over here is actually the waterfall. Now I descended even further to level 4, aka the Crystal Mountain. You would actually see some crystal around here, even some more, and some info section as well. So why not, I'm just going to go around here and potentially make the descent all the way down to the 1st floor when I could actually leave. And if you were to go through here, you would actually see the treetop walk. Now I'm actually just going to walk through this. You could actually see some trees and stuff, palm trees, even more. And as you can see, this is actually the ground floor over here, or actually the third floor, I'm not really sure. But over there is actually the lost wards all the way up to 7th level. Okay guys, I just exited the whole complex. And after nearly 4 hours of an extremely slow paced time, I finally got out of the gardens by the bay, and I'm now going to go to another tourist destination. I'm now on my way back to the MRT, the bayfront, and over here is the Chinese garden. It actually looks like this, with this as well, and it does have some flowers, some trees and stuff, and some greenery. So why not? I'm actually going to go to the bayfront MRT station. I just got out of the garden, and as you can see, this is actually the Marina Bay Sands building complex. Yes, I'm actually going to go in here to actually descend all the way down to the bayfront MRT station. After a short train ride, I finally arrived at Clarke Quay. Well, 35 meters away, but we could consider ourselves as having arrived. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to eat something. It has been nearly 7 hours since I last ate, so do you believe this is gonna be the best opportunity to actually eat? Okay guys, this is Clarke Quay over here, which is actually a shopping center. An outdoor one, by the way, compared to the Marina Bay Sands, which is more like Native Mall or something. But I do believe this is more like Assembly Row, but Assembly Row actually has like tenements and stuff. So I'm not really sure what this position is in terms of the Boston area. But as you can see, it does look quite eccentric inside, with multiple styles, including like this, which is actually the colonial style, and of course this, which is more the British style housing, and of course you have these as like a cover for the rain. Now, as you guys know, Clarke Quay was actually named after Sir Andrew Clarke, and this mall has gone through rejuvenation around 3 years ago, and it actually reopened only about like 5 months ago. I'm not even joking. So over here is the reopened mall. It is absolutely breathtaking, to be honest, but why not? I'm actually going to look for something to eat. Okay guys, I'm in a Little Saigon restaurant, and over here is my meal bun cha. I'm actually going to eat this, and then I'm going to go to the botanical garden. After eating, I decided to go all the way to the Singapore Botanic Gardens. This might be the very last amenity I'm going to visit on this trip. And the fun fact is, it is actually a UNESCO Heritage Site, and it was actually founded by the former Agri-Horticultural Society in 1859. And despite the fact it originally spanned 23 hectares, it now spans 82 hectares. And one of the chief designers is actually a guy named Lawrence Devon, who was actually British. And it was actually characterized by rolling hills, open lawns, winding paths, and panoramic views. And in 1965, after Singapore's independence, the Botanic Gardens actually started to expand and actually played a vital role in organizing and supporting the young nation's urban greening programs. And there are actually 17 buildings inside that have been accorded conservation status by the Urban Redevelopment Authority. So why not? I'm actually going to go in to actually take a walk for a bit, because I do need some fresh air before going to the hotel. Okay guys, I'm currently in a park. As you can see, visitor services at Bukit Timah Gate, and I do believe this is actually the very start of the Botanic Garden, and over there is where you could actually meet if you want some concierge. Now this park is actually next to one of the National University of Singapore's buildings. Now this is not the main campus, but let me tell you guys about National University of Singapore. It is highly coveted as one of the most prestigious universities in the world, according to QS reports. Basically, in the top 10 or 15 of most prestigious universities in the world. And of course, similar to the gardens by the bay, there are actually going to be a lot of flowers and trees and stuff, and greenery. Over here is a pavilion, and as you can see, there are actually a lot of like vines growing around here. Now inside the botanical garden, you would also find a pond as well over here. Not sure if it's artificial or not. Now the aforementioned lake is actually called the Eco Lake. After a short while, I finally entered the official Singapore Botanic Garden here. As you can see, these are actually rubber trees, and this is what the trees look like. And I'm just gonna walk through this path so I can actually get all the way to the Symphony Lake. After a while walking, I finally arrived to the Symphony Lake. I'm currently in a pavilion now over here. And yeah, I'm now thinking of going all the way to the southern terminus of the Botanic Garden, and it is absolutely breathtaking and a good way to exercise and actually lose weight, to be honest. After a while walking, I finally arrived at the Ginger Garden in the Singapore Botanic Garden. Now over here is the rainforest, and luckily I'm only a 10-minute walk away from the southern terminus, aka Orchard Road. Now less than half a mile from the Orchard Street is actually this, which is actually Vine Tunnel. I'm actually going to cross through here to actually get a shortcut into Orchard Street. Okay guys, I just exited the Botanic Garden altogether. I'm finally on Orchard Street, and I'm now waiting for bus 7 in order to get back to the hotel. And I'll show you guys where I currently am. Yes, all the way down here, and I came from all the way up here. 1.5 miles away. Okay guys, I'm now currently at the hotel. I'm now going to sleep. It is kind of late at night because tomorrow I do have to go all the way to Vietnam to actually celebrate Tet with my parents. Now this is actually going to be my first Tet celebration in Vietnam since year 2006. Like around 19 years ago. I'm not even joking. An entire cycle ago, to be honest, when I was just a very little child. Basically about like maybe like preschool age or something. But anyways, here's my conclusion about Singapore. Despite the fact I've not been to every single tourist attraction, in fact I've been to many of the major attractions, and many of them, despite being quite pricey for some, many of them are quite good, and the experience is quite phenomenal, to be honest. It really like defeats any like expensive pricing, in my opinion. And not only are there like good attractions, in fact many attractions are actually free, like many temples and stuff, and even malls. Of course, they're definitely for sure free, which are definitely a perk for Singapore. However, despite some of Singapore's authoritarian laws and stuff, I do believe Singapore's quite clean and very, very developed, in fact. Better than many cities in the US I've visited. And not only is the food significantly cheaper than in Boston, like about 75% of the price of Boston, because I typically pay like around like $18 or $19 for ramen in Boston, whilst I pay like $12 for ramen in Singapore. Public transportation is also cheaper in Singapore than in Boston. Because in Boston I pay like $2.40 for the metro, the MBTA, fixed. Whilst in Singapore, I typically would pay around like maybe $1.60 or something in US dollars for like the metro, mostly, and about $1.20 for the bus, aka $1 US. So given the fact Singapore is quite affordable compared to the US in terms of like food and amenities and stuff, I would say it is definitely recommended to visit Singapore, but don't count on visiting Singapore as your only city. Like, just like Dubai, visit Singapore as sort of like a stopgap between like certain cities and stuff in Asia, because it could be quite pricey, to be honest. But in fact, Singapore could be a very, very great experience to actually have, especially if you're visiting a clean city and stuff, and visiting a multicultural city. Then I would suggest definitely visiting Singapore, but visit as a stopgap, kind of like Dubai, instead of just solely coming to Asia just to visit Singapore. So thank you guys for watching. Please give a big thumbs up, subscribe for more videos, and I cannot wait to return to Singapore because it is quite a great city-state, to be honest. And I'll see you guys soon in Vietnam.